Autumn, I think, is my favourite time of year. The equinox on around September the 21st was probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. So that was when the days and the nights were equal length. Now the nights are drawing in and it's darker. But at the same time, we're getting this lovely low summer light, and I think it really does pick up the colours. So this video is just about a few star plants for now and a couple of star plants that I've discovered this year that I haven't grown before. And my first star is this. It's a wonderful salvia, Salvia involucrata Hadspun. As you can see, it grows to sort of 1.5 metres tall, probably taller on a rich soil. Mine is very thin and dry. It was hardy through last year, and I think many people find it hardy. Conversely, my cousin Claire Austin, who gardens over on the west of the country where it's very wet, she wouldn't keep this through the winter, so she'd have to take cuttings. But it is very easy from cuttings. I gave some to Jim Carter, who we did a podcast with, because I always take my guests a present, and he emailed me the other day and he said, what was the name again of that wonderful plant you gave me? And he'd propagated it up. And I like it because it's quite airy. I can punctuate it, so I've got it in several positions around the border, and it sort of comes up through and just adds that lovely pop of airy colour. So that is probably my #1 favourite plant for this time of year. Starts flowering around July and will go on to the frost, maybe December. And the leaves are nice and tough and fairly evergreen. So it's a stunking good plant. When I take a cutting, I'll just cut off a bit like that, maybe 6 inches. I'll remove the leaves, cut off the flower, shove it in my aeropod type propagator, and it will probably root in a couple of weeks, so I'll have hundreds to give away next year. Another plant that I often say is lovely is this fantastic hardy canna over here. Come and have a look at it. It's Canna iridiflora, also known as Canna emanii. I find it the hardiest canna. It's been with me for many years. It's got this beautiful magenta flower, and it doesn't really look like other cannas, and it goes on and on flowering, and it's probably been flowering since end of July, August, and again will go on to the frost. With it, I will put a bit of compost over the roots in the winter. I'll do a nice sort of duvet of bark or whatever I've got knocking around, and that will keep it warm and going through the winter. And I love it because it's just a bit of a different texture amongst my box and roses and things like that. Another useful plant is Amistad. That's nothing new. And what surprises me about Amistad is Claire, again, in her almost Welsh, she was just in Wales, wet garden cannot keep that through the winter. I've always assumed it's bone hardy everywhere, but it's not. I've also got the pink form, which I like. It's smaller, not so tall, and I don't think it is so hardy. Now, obviously, the star performers at this time of year are dahlias. Come and have a look at my dahlias. My dahlias have been performing for months now. I've done very little. I've deadheaded them occasionally. I've picked a few for the table. This is Thomas Edison. It's one of my favourites. It's tall, it's not staked. And I was thinking this year, because it's been so wet, we had it very dry and then very wet, I thought maybe I would need to stake it, but I haven't. I do shove the odd hoop in the bottom occasionally to stop it totally submerging the box hedge. But it is a grand plant and I love it. Now, a more compact dahlia of a similar colour range is Creme de Cassis. Come and have a look. So this is Creme de Cassis, much squatter. So this is very good for the front. It only grows up to 60 centimetres, barely that, but it's a lovely plant again. Now, I did order a few more new dahlias this year, and one of them was Nuit d'été, which is lovely. I've got round the back. I love it. But 2 of them came the wrong colour, and obviously they sent them out in February. I planted them out probably May. And then I didn't realise till July that they were totally the wrong dahlias. And this happens with bulbs, it happens with roses, it happens with many plants. And when that happens, you just let them know and make sure they send you the correct ones. And people often think, oh, because I ordered them 6 months ago, they will never replace them or give me my money back. But they will do. It's goodwill. and it's really bad business. And if you don't tell them, they'll get it wrong and again. And more likely than not, they've brought it in from a supplier who sent them the wrong thing. So they have to go back to the supplier and say, please send me the correct plants. My clients are getting cross. The worst thing they want is for you to say nothing about it. They carry on losing more and more customers because they get disenchanted with getting the wrong plant. So just be firm and get what you want, because there's nothing more disappointing. I mean, I got some ghastly orange things that were hideous, pom-pom, tiny, and not very vigorous at all, and they were just hopeless. So my next good plant, I think, is probably quince for this time of year. Come and have a look at my quince. So this is quince. Obviously, at this time of year, lots and lots of fruits, and we've got maybe, I don't know, 10 trees, something like that. And people often wonder what to do with quince, but they are brilliant. Now, I slice them up, so I get them, thin them slightly into sort of as thin as you can slice, and I just put them on a very low heat overnight, or for about 8 hours. And then you get these dried, little dried crisps of them, and they taste delicious. They taste so much sweeter. If I ate that off the tree, it would be quite bitter. If I put it in an apple pie, it would add a distinctive, lovely quincy flavour. So these are really delicious. I mean, we eat them non-stop. Now, I might have mentioned this before, but there has been a lot of research done on the quince, and it is extremely good for your gut biome. Particularly, it has, if you've got Helicobacter pylori, which is a stomach bacteria that causes stomach ulcers, which is a gut bacteria which causes stomach ulcers, which is really unpleasant. Apparently, if you eat quince, it really does help it, and that's been proven on scientific papers in Google Scholar. Also, they fed a lot of quince, I don't know why they did this, to Wistar rats in experiments. And they found that the rats' libido increased massively. Not only did they do a lot more mating having had quince, but they also had far better performance. So each one lasted longer. So it is an extraordinary fruit. It is highly delicious. It's well worth growing because it's a beautiful tree. But I really do think that actually, from my experiments with humans, quince also works with humans the same way as it does for the rats. So that's a great plant to have for autumn. Shortly the foliage is going to turn to a lovely butter golden yellow, and then we get the lovely new growth in spring with the grey felted undersides of the leaf. Then we'll get the lovely new growth in spring, which has beautifully grey felted undersides to the leaf, followed by the magnificent whitey pink sort of translucent flowers. And the shape, I think, is nice. It's quite a quirky shape. This one is covered with these balls. I'm doing this air layering to get many more of this because it's a beautifully blight resistant clone, Serbian gold, hardly a speck of blight on it. So that's my number one tree for this time of year. And then the final plant that I've discovered this year that I'm going to be growing a lot more of. Come and see that. The best plant I discovered this year for me was an Eremurus. Now, I've grown Eremurus before and they are wonderful. I mean, there's one such as Eremurus joanna, which is really tall and it grows sort of 1.5, 1.8, and it has these massive, massive bulbs that are quite extraordinary to plant. But the one that I like particularly is Pinocchio, Isabellinus Pinocchio, and that is good because it's just 60 centimetres high or so. It's a lovely sort of burnt orange colour, and you can just spot it through your borders, and I think it looks lovely with the colours like magentas and blues and things like that. It really zings out. Now, I'm planting them now, which is why I'm talking about them now, because they will flower sort of June, July, and they have a good staying power because they slowly open up from the bottom up. So you get a long period of interest. I reckon it was a good month, 6 weeks, which I think is pretty good for such a wonderful statement. Now, when you get these bulbs, and this one is much smaller than the Joanna, which is, as I said, massive, you have to decide which way up to plant it, and it can be confusing because you've all got these hairy bits on the top, which are the dead leaves. So that is the bottom where it's been removed from the old bulb. And so you must plant it this way up, and you can just see the bud. Well, the bud is just coming up in there. You can't always see that, and so it is confusing, but do make sure they are the right way up, because I think it would be a struggle for it to turn itself through 180 degrees. Now, normally I would plant them outside in the border, but these are going in my courtyard garden, which is full of dahlias and all sorts of things, and there's just not room to squeeze them in at the moment. And so what I'm doing is I've actually planted mine in these pots here, and then I will plant them in the ground when I've got a bit of space, when they start to grow, which will probably be sort of April, something like that. Now, the important thing is they love sun. I remember seeing them in Japan, in Hokkaido, which very cold winters, -20, way colder than ours, but lots of snow on top, and then quite moist, sunny summers. And they were amazing. I've never seen Eremurus like that. But they seem to do pretty well here. People say they like drainage. Sometimes they plant them on mounds. So, but I'm just going to put them in the pot like that. So I've got it in this pot. You can just see like that. And I'll put it just that sort of depth, making sure it's in contact with the rhizome, the sort of rooty bits. And then I'm going to just put this compost on top. And I'm just going to cover it by about 1 inch. And I don't need to keep them warm in the winter. They will tolerate the cold. So I'm just going to put this in the cold frame there. And then, as I said, as soon as they start to grow and they've got some roots and I've got some space in the borders, I'll put them out there. But I think they are the most tremendous Eremurus. And all of the 5 that I grew last year all grew, came up, grew, flowered and performed. And so we've had a lot of questions on Gardeners Question Time as to why they haven't succeeded. And I do wonder if it's because people have just planted them the wrong way up. Maybe there's not enough sun, maybe it's too wet. But with me, in the wettest of wet winters, they were absolutely fine. So that's just a few things that you can look at and admire and maybe order for your garden for next year. It is a lovely time of year. It's all slowing down a bit. I'm not on the back foot. I'm not continually weeding, cutting hedges, mowing grass. It's all about planning, looking forward to the future and just enjoying what you've got.